Welcome to The Puzzled Life with Susan Engelbarts, where we talk about autism and how it affects your daily life.
Hi, welcome back to The Puzzled Life. I'm Susan Engelbarts, and I have an amazing guest here today, Marc Miller, and he is a professional race car driver. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Yes. He also is a father. He does coaching. He speaks at universities.
They let me.
I thought I wore a lot of different hats. You definitely topped it.
And I don't even wear a hat very often. Apparently, to be a race car driver nowadays, you have to wear a lot of different hats. You have to do a lot of different things. It's not what the public sees as a race car driver is not always like the real truth of what you actually do. We spend maybe less than 1% of our time inside of a race car. So, people ask, well, what do you do when you're not racing? I was like, a lot of things. Just a lot of things. We have to do a lot. It's an expensive sport. A lot of businesses really entrust us with presenting their brand, their business development. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes marketing and business development that goes on in racing. So we have to be really quite good at that. And so a lot of my other time is spent on conference calls for trying to find new connections for our partners and sponsors, to find our publicists and PR people are looking for mainstream story angles of how we can expose more exposure to our partners and all of our sponsors, and so we have to wear a lot of different hats.
You do. And so going back to way back when you began the whole racing
dream sequence.
So you were 11 years old when you started this.
Yes, I was 11. I was a slightly chubby, overweight, fat kid at 11, and didn't really like stick-and-ball sports. Like, I would play football and baseball, and just never really got baseball, which fast forward years later, I ended up racing for a baseball player, which was an interesting story. And I still didn't really like baseball very much. But I just never really knew what I wanted to do. I was 11. I had a good excuse to not know what you want. Nowadays, parents kind of push their kids into professional sports or some sort of direction as early as possible. But, it was, at that time, I saw a go-kart go by. I was sitting on my front porch, and it went down a one-way street. Wow. So I was like, well, if I went and followed it, I could probably catch it. I'd probably get winded pretty quickly. And I met the family that had this go-kart, and I said, can I try it? Like, I was pretty forthcoming. And they were like, well, if you come to the racetrack with us. And I told my dad about it, and we went to visit the track. And it was a little dirt track in Virginia, where I'm from Grand Rapids. Okay. I was born in Grand Rapids. I'm a Michigander all the way, but there was a period of time I lived in Virginia.
What? You left us?
I did. Yeah.
Didn't really have much of a say, I feel.
I did not have much of a say. At 2, I was like, didn't have really a voice for myself at that point. So, and I fell in love with it right away. I just liked everything about it. It kind of, got my heart racing a little bit, and it kind of gave me a direction in life. So from that point, I was like, I think I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And every kid says that, you hope.
Right.
Like, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be an astronaut. And you hope that they're going to fall in love with something and have enough passion that they literally will do everything they can to accomplish that. And I was one of the fortunate kids that made it a passion, and it took until I was probably in my mid to late 20s before it actually was a career,
So you never gave up, obviously.
Never. You can't give up on anything. If you give up, then you're just like everyone else who gives up, and you don't really accomplish any goals by giving up anything. Right. So yeah, I went to school for public relations, for marketing, for psychology, not for a degree. Like, the one thing that I did not race through was college.
I don't think you're alone there. I feel
I
like.
took my time in college, but I had a calculating goal of, all the different understanding what the business side of motorsports was, and all of the necessities and requirements of a pro driver, like a journeyman driver, not someone that has a lot of opportunity with funding, like has a lot of sponsors, that money is not going to dry up.
Right.
So if you don't have that, and you have to create the wealth, you have to create opportunities for yourself, then the more you have in your portfolio, your database, your knowledge base, the better opportunities you can create for yourself. So I was in the marketing department, and I was like, why are there no psychology courses in marketing? Like, you take a 100 level course in psychology. That's a really valuable thing to know if you're going to be communicating at the level you have to communicate with a variety of different people. I want to know what makes people tick and how I can better communicate with them, and ultimately to get what everybody wants.
Right.
So I ended up.
That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I ended up taking 400 level courses that were not required, which was probably not the greatest thing to do.
So did you end up graduating?
No, this is interesting. I was 2 credit hours short of graduating, and I think I got sick of the $10,000 worth of parking tickets I got at Western Michigan University. But I got to the point where I had enough credits for a PR and communications major, a marketing major, double major, and a minor in psychology. But I was a phys ed credit short and a elective short.
Wow.
And I went and I said, listen, there's got to be a wave. I played college tennis my first year.
You're like, do sports for a living. You were short of phys ed.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is like, I was racing all through college.
Why study that? I'm already good at that.
And I was like, can you do anything? Like, well, you don't meet the criteria for these things. I said, yeah, but I more than made up for it and everything else. And I really just became down to like a moral dilemma for me. It's like, do I want to spend another $2,500 in 4.5 months or 5 months to say that I graduated, or do I have everything that I really need to go on and do stuff? And at this point, I had already been working. I was racing. I had my own business that I had started a year and a half before that was really starting to pick up. It was a marketing consultant for motorsports, like a niche motorsports divisions. And I was basically employed and making money and doing what I wanted to do, and I just kind of refused out of a moral, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to stay in school just to say I graduated. Yeah.
Right.
And I think if you're going to drop out of school, that's probably the only way I would suggest you ever drop out of school. Right. I wouldn't drop out like after your sophomore year and say, I just don't want to go to school anymore and I don't know what I want to do with my life.
Right.
I knew what I wanted to do early.
And you were already
and I had
successful
everything.
in that. I mean, I
was getting there. And the extra 5 months and the degree wasn't going to, no. But I mean, if I decided a year later, I don't want to race anymore, that degree would have come in handy. Maybe.
But you only need to do 2 credits.
But
you could have.
I could have.
But you didn't need it. So
but that was at that point. I'm a competitive type person, and I think out of spite, I was like, I'm going to show you that I don't need those 2 credit hours. And I'm still waiting for my honorary degree from Western Michigan University. So call me Western. I more than made up for it in the parking tickets that I got.
That's what they should use that towards your credits. So now even more, you are a father, as I stated earlier. You met your wife.
Fiance.
Fiance, sorry.
Yeah, my fiance. So I have 2 boys from first marriage. Okay. And we co-parent extremely well, and I'm very fortunate because, as statistics show, it's hard enough to stay married, but when you're parents of an autistic child, it's really even more difficult. And that's not really an excuse for divorce. I mean, that wasn't by anything, but
it adds a stress level.
it
for
adds
sure.
a another level of stress for sure. And I think our separation and divorce, I'm thankful for both of us, because I think we have become extremely good parents for our children, which, and there's a high level of respect for them, for her as their mother, and I think it's mutual, and we co-parent extremely well together, and the boys, both of my boys know that they're loved. She's remarried, I have a fiance, and we have 2 loving families for them, and that's a great environment,
awesome.
great environment to be in. And I think you really have to have that, a strong parenting system in place, whether it's in 2 households or 1. And I think for my son, who was diagnosed at 2, because you can't diagnose earlier than that apparently,
Right.
but at 1, we really knew that, like all the signs are there, the self-stimming and the eye contact and lack of eye contact, and just I didn't really know what autism was. So
when you were seeing the signs,
yeah.
did you have to do research or reach out to people?
So Google was invented back then. Google was around. So this was like 14 years ago, 13 years ago. And I started researching it. And I think the hard thing for me was you can accept things a certain way. So some people, it takes a long amount of time to accept something and change behavior. And for me, it took about 2 hours. 2 hours of fear, crying, not knowing what to do. I flashed through the next 30 years of my life and his life and our family's life in like minutes, and broke down. And then when that all was over, I wiped my face and washed it and said, okay, now what do we do? Now what's the next step?
Right.
And then you just have to get on with it, I don't know if everyone has that, if everyone really actually processes it that way. I don't think so. And I think that's what's hard. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about like Autism Society of West Shore is an organization here in West Michigan that I've always been supportive of, because they were supportive of my family.
Yes, and actually, when I was introduced to Mark, I realized that we both were supporters
Yeah.
of Autism of West Shore, which they have helped me. Sorry, I keep hitting this microphone.
Yeah.
They have helped me tremendously financially on a
Scholarship
personal level.
programs. Yeah. I just agree with how they approach everything. One, they're a great source socially and emotionally for families. It's a place that and there's organizations like this all over the country, but
Yes.
in West Michigan, I feel like we're really blessed to have not just the way the school systems are.
Yeah.
Like, we were Zeeland school systems, and Zeeland is a very good school system that really helps with the accommodating children on the spectrum. And ASWS was just one of those organizations that was warm, that let you, like, I just felt like everything was going to be okay.
Yes.
And with whether it be scholarship programs or just group get-togethers where you can interact with other families, and I kind of took that on as I need to, whatever I could do. At the time, I was not at a level of professional sports where, even though I was at the very early stages of my pro career. So as years went on and I was able to do more and more, it really was a drive for me to be more known in West Michigan. Because as of right now, I think I still am the only professional race car driver in West Michigan that really, on a national or international scale, and it's still very small. Like, I'm still not Kirk Cousins, and I'm not,
Better than them.
the type of professional athlete
Right.
that is looked at that way. But one of the motivations is if I can do better as a pro athlete, then I can give more back to the community and more back to ASWS and do more things for charities in West Michigan, and that was like a motivation for me. It's like, you know, if I am more well known, then I can do more, and it was kind of in the back of my mind as far as a drive to succeed. And over the years, you know, I'll auction things for ASWS, and I've met a lot of amazing people through that. People from Detroit and from all over the Midwest that come to the charity golf outing, and it's a great place to network and create more awareness for autism and just people that are supportive of it. I'm thankful for just where I live too. Some people ask, you know, well, if you race, why don't you move to Florida or Texas or North Carolina where all the NASCAR drivers are? And I was like, that's where I live.
Well, because it's beautiful here.
It's beautiful here, and
even in the winter. But
I think it's gorgeous.
That must be hard for you to race in the winter time around here. No,
you put snow tires on.
Okay,
you can race anywhere.
Solved all the problems.
I know.
Look at that. No, but I honestly, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Alabama, I've lived in Florida, I've lived everywhere, and I love Michigan. I mean, you have all the seasons, the lakes, even though when I first moved here, I was
they
like,
have
it's
seasons
not the ocean.
everywhere. I lived in Virginia for a little while. There was 4 equal seasons.
Really?
In Michigan, well, I admit, listen, there's things like you have to admit the good and the bad. And people do say, well, you've got 8 months of winter, and it's like that's not true. It's more like 4.5 months or 5 months.
Right.
But it's really, with air travel nowadays, it's so easy to leave.
So, I mean, yeah, you can just fly anytime.
I only need 3 days of sun a month, really. Come on.
Come on. No, we were in Florida for Christmas, and I was like, this is hot.
Yeah, it's too hot.
Like 80, and I'm like, oh my word. Anyway, so going back to autism.
Yes.
So, what have you done to try to prevent your youngest from feeling like you give all your attention to your oldest? Or are you still learning?
I'm still learning.
That me too.
Yeah,
so I didn't know if you.
I think it's a lot harder when they're like under 10 and they don't have like the developed sense of self, and I am really fortunate right now. My youngest son is just such a sensitive, caring type of kid, and I think part of that is because of what he's had to kind of do and help. I think I mentioned earlier that he's kind of had to become the big brother. There's a 2-year spread, and I said, and that's something that I put on him, and I feel bad about it, and I have those conversations. Like, I feel like it's important for me to have an adult-type conversation with a 13-year-old, because he's becoming a man, he's growing up, he's a caring kid, and I apologized to him. I was like, listen, this is tough. You know, like, Evan is not a typical big brother. I have a brother 5 years older than me, was also not very typical, like he wasn't very social and potentially could have been on the spectrum, and you know, it's not until later in life do we kind of have this common friendship and brotherly friendship. So with my 2 boys, you know, definitely my younger has to kind of take the lead, and it's constantly changing too. So, you know, I can't always ask him to be mature. He's 13. He's a kid. He needs to be a kid. I can't always ask him to be, you know, a big kid. So I know I demand a lot more than out of my 13-year-old that I think a lot of people do because of that. But I think you can't be afraid to have those conversations with them and explain why. And, you know, it's the same conversation. It's like, well, Dad, how come I can't go on the ski trip? Like, if you can't afford to send your children somewhere, to a camp, to this, you have to have a conversation that says, here's why. You know, you can't just say, just because. You let them understand and learn and realize why it's important to work hard and do the right things and have just some sort of positive or negative outlook about, have an opinion about something, because it's important to be able to teach them that. And you're not going to be able to do everything you want to do. Is entitled world we live in right now, where everyone expects they can do whatever they want to do because their friends are doing it. It's not. That's not reality, and it shouldn't be. And I think you need to have those real conversations. Whether your children are atypical or on the spectrum, you have to try to have those conversations, and not just expect that you can't. You know, well, my son has autism, so I can't talk to him. You can try.
Yes.
You have to try.
Yes.
And you have to find common ground, because they're still children, and they're still like anything. You have to have that conversation. You have to have a relationship with your friends, your loved ones, your children, the people you work with, and it all comes down to communication. And if you can't communicate with someone, what kind of relationship are you going to be able to build with them? And I think that just had that understanding. I learned that at an early age, and which is kind of where I think part of my success in motorsports comes from. But I try to have that same level of success with family. It's a lot harder with the family, because you're running around, like everyone's got different tasks, and just last night I went to like 3 different locations to take children here and pick up children here and deliver this to that, and it just, you don't even have time to talk half the time. So it's a lot easier when you go to work and you sit down and you have a structured plan. You have, okay, here's our plan, here's how we're going to incorporate all this. And you have to have that at home too, and then it feels like it's work sometimes. So it's it's difficult to have a family in general, much less children,
I really understand why my parents always had like a bottle of wine in the house. Or
oh, we're going down that road.
No, but they just always. I was probably the most challenging out of my sister and myself.
They gave you wine.
They probably wish if that would have put me to sleep. They'd been like, try it.
My mom told me that she used to rub whiskey on my gums, and I was like, I had teeth when I was 12. She doesn't appreciate that very much.
But I do remember growing up, one of my really close friends, she would tell me that her mom would parent. She had 4 siblings, so she would parent each one differently. And I said, how does that make sense? How does that make sense that she'll let your sister do this but not you, or this, that? I totally understand that now. Like, I trust Trey to walk, again, the school's right down the street from our house, but I trusted him to walk down there in 3rd grade. Yeah. Liam will be in 3rd grade next year, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll take you still. So I figuring out now, so the way I communicate with my oldest, I'm pretty blunt. Like, you were mentioning that you see a lot of similarities with your son, Ethan, right?
Evan.
And
my
then
oldest son, Evan.
Your middle son,
Seth.
Seth, really
I will
I'm so sorry.
Seth, I will let do stuff like he's at a friend's house, and he's just, I trust that it's fine. Evan went to a party last night with his orchestra class, and I was like, I can come pick him up. And his teacher, who's just amazing, said, we can bring him home. And I was like, really? Okay. Yeah, I gave her my number, so she had it. And like an idiot, I didn't get her number. Right. So I have her email address, and I have all this information. And I'm sitting there watching TV with my youngest son and Tabitha, my fiance, and 9:30 rolls around, and I'm like now in panic mode. I haven't heard from her. I don't have a way to reach her. I'm like, maybe I should just run down there. And she's just like, Tab's like, just give it some time. And I'm like, you don't understand. And she's like, I do understand. Give it some time. And I'm like, okay. So 15 minutes goes by, and now I'm like, I can't even watch TV.
Because you're
I'm
so
like,
nervous.
now I'm flipping out.
Right.
He's 15 years old.
Right.
With, what goes through a parent's mind that you all of a sudden they're in a safe place with a safe person,
Right.
and now you're still thinking, oh, the school's burnt down, or like terrorists came in and kidnapped kids, and like every scenario that's
Right.
ridiculous that goes through your mind, or he just wandered out, he just walking down the street, and
Because you've witnessed all those experiences, so it brings that fear.
I just it's just scary
Yes.
to think about, and
Right.
then just as I was at the height of hysteria in my own mind, but trying to stay nice and cool on the outside, my phone rings, and hi, yeah, oh, you're on your way, okay, great. Now I feel like an idiot,
Yes. But
That's
that makes
being a
us great
parent.
parents.
Well,
Right?
does it? It makes us parents, but
Right.
I don't know how great that was. Like
I feel
couldn't-
like if you worry about your children, then you're really killing it in parenting. It's the parents that don't worry and just like, good luck in life. You have been so informative, and I have learned so much from you today, so I really, truly appreciate it.
See, another hat I can put on
Yeah.
is expert of
Talking
making
to
stuff
people.
up on the fly. Once you hit walls at a high rate of speed, everything else gets a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true. That's
Really?
BS. Everything's hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I
The hitting the wall is the easy thing.
oh,
So
God.
I'll take getting my bell rung against the wall in a race car over the
Worrying about your
the
child.
hard things in parenting any day, because that's just work. I mean, if you're doing your job right, you're not hitting the wall, but you can't. Other people sometimes hit you, so you have no choice. But and I think that's a pretty good example of life. Like,
Yeah.
you can do everything right as a parent. It doesn't mean things are going to happen the way you want it to. So have a support system. Have a bigger support system you think you need,
Right.
and is really helpful.
Well, on this note, I would like to say how encouraging it is that you've used areas in your life that some would find very challenging, and you use them to push you to success. And I think that is a huge difference between you in your racing career versus me sitting. No, I'm just kidding. But that is a huge difference between you and your success in racing and your career, and that's what drives you. And I think
competition, in what we do now with kids, competition when I was growing up and when my parents were growing up, competition was like in everything. I really think as a parent, we owe it to our children to really, whether they're on the spectrum or not,
right.
to be real with them and not be overly protective of them, and really, create a true reality for them, because we set rules in our own home, and it'd be dumb to say these rules don't apply outside the home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh no, you have to do this after you eat dinner. You have to put your plate here, and you have to do that. And you set all these standards and rules. Well, but then outside you can do whatever you want, and everyone has to listen to you, and your opinion matters to everyone, and that's not true.
Right.
So I think we need to really share with everyone as parents.
I guess
This new world that we're living in is a little harder for kids to really be involved in.
Right.
We're making it hard for kids right now, and I don't want that for my kids.
I guess for me, I feel I struggle in where I think I could see Liam, any one of my kids, really be successful in an area, but then something will come up which makes them uncomfortable, so they want to stop. Like, for example, my oldest Trey plays the trumpet, and he got a letter sent home saying, if you want to do, you can do like a 5-minute solo.
Yeah.
And he hid that because he was like, I don't want you.
Not ready for it
My
yet.
mom's going to sign me up if she sees this.
Yeah.
Little did he know we also get an email sent home, so I
Yes.
knew, but he didn't approach me.
I get that.
So I didn't push him
Right.
because I feel like that he wasn't ready to do a solo performance.
So he's 8?
12.
12. Okay. So I look at kids are still kids.
Right.
So some kids don't come out of their shell until they're 30. Like, I have friends that were like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life till I was 32. All right. So, you know, like
You have to find that balance.
You have
just
to find the
in life
balance.
and
I
anything,
know,
yes.
coming up in motorsports, and I do a lot of driver coaching, and I've coached a lot of young drivers, and there are parents that take their kids out of school, they're homeschooled, they travel the country, they have a full-time mechanic that they pay that lives in their house to go race go-karts. Like, that's a whole nother level. Like,
Right.
you are basically telling your child that
That's what
this
he's
is
going
what
to do.
you're going to do. And the one thing that I've learned is when their choices spread themselves really thin, then they are forced with what do I do in this situation? And you can have a conversation about it. You can say, okay, well, here's what's happening. You've got this amount of time that you're putting towards martial arts and this amount of time that you're practicing your trumpet. And if you really want these things, then you have to put effort into it. And it's hard because, like, I feel you, man. You're spread pretty thin.
I need that in my own life.
Yeah, and it's hard enough for anybody.
Right.
But at that point, like, they're so busy that maybe they'll, I like this more than this, and they can make their own decisions from it. So my oldest son, Evan, doesn't quite have, he enjoys a lot of things, but he, what he's passionate about is like math and numbers and languages and things like that. I think he's learned the Russian alphabet and the Latin alphabet and the Greek alphabet. Yeah.
That is amazing.
I know. There was something, and I learned this a long time ago. I took him to a go-kart track, and I was there coaching, and I took my kids, and I'm like, let's set up, you can color, and he was much younger, but you can color, and I had papers and crayons, and we walked down the grid, and there's go-karts lined up, ready to go out for a race. And every race car's got a number on it,
right.
and a different color number, and a different font, and different.
Right.
And I just see him. He's not coloring, like he's not really drawing anything. He's just doing numbers. He loves to write numbers. But one thing I noticed is he was doing the numbers in a grid format, lined up, in different fonts and different colors. And just that walk. This was an hour later. And just that little short walk that we had down, he had seen all the numbers,
Wow.
knew where they were, knew what font it was, and replicated it, just drawing it. So I knew he had a photographic memory, but it wasn't until recently that my youngest son said, Dad, Evan knows the Russian alphabet. We were watching TV, and someone said something in Russian, and I said, oh, that's a really neat language, and he said something in Russian. I was like, Evan, do you know Russian? Yeah, I was joking. He goes, yes, I know the Russian alphabet. And I was like, what? And we were blown away, and he went through the whole Russian alphabet. I said, what other languages do you know? And he goes, I know Latin, Greek.
Wow.
Like he knows all the Greek alphabet, and he just like went through it, and and he likes to learn those things. So, of course, like Tab and I were sitting there like, okay, we need to get him he needs to become a translator, and we're gonna learn. We're gonna get all these, Duolingo, and we'll get all these things, and that'll be his career. That's what the parent thinks. We've got a career for you now.
He'll be in his own movie.
I said, do you want to be a translator? Do you want to travel the government and do all these things?
That's awesome.
And we got all excited and stuff. But really, it just,
he's gonna decide.
If he doesn't want to do that, it's like, that's a wasted talent, young man. I can be the parent. So that's to sum it all up, like with any kid.
So basically, we don't have any of the answers.
You have no say. You have no say of what your kids are going to do. No matter how talented and gifted they are, they're going to disappoint you in every way, in some way. No, I think they're just.
We all dark path there for a second.
I think my parents didn't know it, but they did a great job with my brother and I. He won an Oscar and an Emmy this year for what he does, and I won a championship in racing, and we're professionals in our field. And
Can we get them on the show?
Yeah, they will just. I think they're going to say the exact same thing I did. We have no idea. We just support them, and we're lucky.
And we're going to end it on that happy note. So.
They're happy for them, apparently. My dad called me the other day, and he's like, I watched your acceptance speech, and I just cried, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, you know, and I don't know what to say other than like, thanks, Dad, you know, and because I didn't get emotional about it. But when I started to think about my kids calling me and saying that to me, or me calling them and saying I'm really proud of you, and like I started to get emotional, and so I really put myself in his place, and when I do that I get more emotional. But like it really, you know, it's funny when he calls me, I'm like, yeah, Dad, I told you I was going to do all this. You know, like a brat. I told you I was going to win championships, and this is what I wanted to do. Duh, yeah, And
thanks for joining the bandwagon.
But when I put myself in his place, I could not be happier if I could call my kids and say that. Yeah. And that's like this, like I haven't. He is more accomplished than I have been ever.
I really
because
hope
of
my
that.
kids say
And
that
that's
about
the
me.
way I think about it. So
kids, when you watch this, you have to say exactly what he just said.
Nah, you've got to like listen to your parents. We know what we're talking about most of the time.
So, all right. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time.